I want to take you back to an event that happened in the Adventist faith, the Advent denomination, the Advent movement. And I'm sharing it because it is something that many other Christians besides Adventist Christians are part of. The pioneers were alive in Daniel and Revelation. We know this. The whole movement is rooted and grounded in these prophetic pages. And these pioneers who went before us, just as I was relating things about my grandmother and her family and whatever, we have much to be thankful for those who have gone before us. They were not foolish people, but they were not always correct in their understanding. Sometimes they got the cart before the horse. That's an expression of speech. I think we can all appreciate what that means. You don't get the cart before the horse. You get the horse before the cart. The pioneers, in some areas especially, got the cart before the horse. And in one of these areas, it had to do with a single word in the prophecies. And that word is the daily. And it would take several decades for Advent leaders to come to the realization that they had worked out these prophecies in great detail, and all the years and all the events and all the people and all the whatever. And no one had ever discussed or described or worked out what is the daily. Because these prophecies in Daniel, Revelation, but in a different format, focus on the daily, the daily, the daily. What is the daily that is to be taken away? And one day they came to the realization, some of these early leaders, they came to the realization that these time periods, listen to the word, these time periods in Daniel and Revelation are connected to taking away the day. As a matter of fact, they begin with taking away the daily. How do we know that? You have a Bible close by? I want you to go to Daniel chapter 12. Familiar, but I want you to see it. I'm in Daniel 12, and I'm going to share just a few verses beginning in verse 9. And he, that's the angel at the beginning of chapter 12, he, Michael, said, "Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until a certain time." I want you to see this. Let's not just read through it and read over it. Go your way, Daniel. Now, if you are acquainted with the book of Daniel and acquainted with chapter 12, you know that there's all this information that's given to Daniel in visions and dreams. And he says again and again, but I don't understand it. But I don't know what it means. And throughout his writing, he is appealing to heaven, to the angels. Tell me what this means. I don't understand. And of course, as you go through Daniel's visions and dreams that are recorded, the angel shows up and says, "This is what it means. This is what it means." And usually the vision or story closes with, "But I still don't understand." Chapter 12 is one of those places, "But I still don't understand." So this is how the angel Michael, who is Christ by another name, is addressing this issue. He said, "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed." They're not just closed up, they are locked up till the time of the end. So what can we know about Daniel's time? Come on, it's not the time of the end. Many shall be purified. Here comes the trouble. Many shall be purified, made white, and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly. None of the wicked shall understand. But, here's a promise, but the wise will or shall understand. And from, look at the little word "the" and see that it is not italicized. Go 2 or 3 more words, and there are italicized words in the verse. There's a specificity here, and we need to see it. And from the time, there's your time quotient. There's your time component. There's your prophecy. From the time, the daily shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up 1,290 days. Of course, the others are supplied there. The words are supplied. There shall be, showing that this is still future. Shall is future tense. And those who are putting together the King James understand that this is yet to take place. I just want to skip down to the last verse 13 with you. Look at it with me, please. Michael is still commanding Daniel, but go thou thy way till something. What? Till the end. What is the daily? Now, we've rehearsed this. We've talked about it. There was a real contention about this subject back in the late 1800s. And the brethren went to Sister White personally and said, Sister White, what light has God given you on the daily? And to their shock, they were not prepared for the answer. She says, I don't have any light on it. God has not given me any light on this matter. Why would they be shocked? Because they were educated men by this time. The denomination had put some of them through schooling and preparation and instruction. They were educated by this time, several of these men, and they understood that you cannot talk about these numbers, these time periods in Daniel, 3.5 years, 1,260 days, 1,290 days, 1,335 days, 40 and 2 months. You can't talk about these time periods. You cannot fill in the flesh. You cannot fill in the spaces if you don't solve the mystery, the riddle of the daily. And it's obvious that they had all these prophecies all worked out. It really upset Uriah Smith because he wrote Daniel and the Revelation and he had it all, and he goes through this whole rigmarole of trying to keep the church from going further. We've got the light. We need to talk about things that people overlook. Christians, devoted Christians, they overlook because they don't see the larger picture. When you are reading, anyone is reading, you know that the eye is jumping ahead, don't you? You know that you are actually jumping past some of the words, but the brain fills in the spaces. That's what we need to do here. I want you to tell me, don't look it up, but tell me what the first verse in the Bible says. Look at the board. In the beginning what? God what? Created. In the beginning, God created. That's where we want to get started, in the beginning. I'm in Matthew 24, and I'll invite you to turn there with me. I'm going to start reading in verse 1. Jesus went out and departed from the temple. His disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, See you not all these things? Verily or truthfully, or certainly I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, and this is what they said. Tell us when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the what? Come on. The end, the end, the end. That's where we were in Daniel. The end, the end. Jesus did not say, I'm going to tell you about the end of the world. He simply described a time, and they said, it has to be the end. And they reasoned correctly, and Jesus filled in the blank spaces. Tell us, when shall these things be? The word when is about timing. When shall these things be? What shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? Skip down to verse 6, please. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled. For all these things is supplied, for all these things must come to pass, but the what? The end is not yet. Does this have a familiar ring? But the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the what? Genesis 1:1. All these are the what? Beginning. Not the beginning of the beginning, but the beginning of something else. Tell me what? Sorrows. What is the context? The end, the end, the end, the end. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. Let's go on. I'm in Luke 21. Just a few more verses. I'm in chapter 21, verse 10 and verse 11, please. Then said he unto them, this is Jesus, nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Great earthquakes shall be in divers places, famines, pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs shall there be from heaven. Verse 12 says, but before all these, and the last verse that we did not read in Matthew 24 a few moments ago says, but they shall lay hands on you, and they will persecute you, and they will deliver you up to the synagogues and to prisons, and you'll be brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. So the point I want to make, and I want to stress, is the context in Luke 21 and the context in Matthew 24 are exactly the same, but it does not have the word beginning. That's the time component in Matthew 24. And this is Jesus. All these things that I'm describing, wars, famines, pestilence, all these troubles that I am describing for you, to you, are the beginning. Now, what do we mean by beginning? Let's do it on the board. If there is a beginning, contextually, there will be an end. This is a mystery. Why is it a mystery? Because as you go through Daniel and you go through Jesus' words about Daniel, these are secrets which God has locked up. These are secrets. They are locked up. Why is God in the locking up business? I thought He was in the opening up business. What is it that Jesus Himself said God locks up? The timing. Apparently He locked it up for the pioneers of the Advent movement too. They thought they had all the keys to get into the temple, but apparently they did not. The beginning of the end. Let's do that. We've done this for quite some time in our seminars. How long is the end? 7 last years. We're going to meet that expression again in a few minutes. You have this. If you don't, I have extras right here. I'll be glad to give it to you, Robert, if anyone needs. You have this. I just want to point one place, and that's the last line on the bar right here. Right here. This begins with January 20, of 2017. This closes 12 months later, ends 12 months later with January 20 of 2018. What follows January 20 of 2018? This is what we're going to see. I'm doubling it. I'm doubling it so that we understand this very important and prophetic matters. If something is doubled, it has special meaning. What does it mean if it's doubled? Come on.
Sure.
It's certain. It's sure. I'm going to show you that in the book of Daniel, God has doubled and doubled. If you have double, double, what does that mean?
Absolutely, it's sure.
It means look, pay attention. So, I caught this drift in Ellen White's writings. If you want to make a note of the reference, I'll give it to you. It's Prophets and Kings 278, but you don't need it. Just listen. We're standing on the threshold of the crisis of the ages. In quick succession, the judgments of God will follow one another. The judgments of God will follow one another. And what are these judgments going to be? Fire and flood and earthquake with war and bloodshed. We're not to be surprised at this time by events both great and decisive, for the angel of mercy cannot remain much longer to shelter the impenitent. Tell me what that word impenitent means. Come on. It means they're asleep at the wheel. They're not paying attention. They're not. Now, I've expressed on there that this is pure guesswork. So far, the guesses have been kind of correct. And we're taking on a whole new meaning in the last 7 days. We're approaching what? Come on. Are we approaching war? Yes, we are. But according to this Daniel vision of chapter 4, the great tree, and you are the great tree, but you're going to do something, and at the end of 12 months, you're going to be cut down. So I want you to see Daniel chapter 2. Turn there, and we're just going to see 2 or 3 verses, please. And what we're looking for is the time component. We have 2 dreams and 2 visions. The dreams were given to Nebuchadnezzar. The visions were given to Daniel. Verse 27 of Daniel 2. Daniel answered in the presence of the king, and he said, don't miss it, the secret which the king hath demanded, can't the wise men, astrologers, magicians, soothsayers show you? But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be, here's your time component, what shall be in the latter days. So we have a time component. The very first Bible study I ever gave when I became a Seventh-day Adventist and wanted to go give Bible studies, my very first Bible study was on Daniel 2. And guess what, guys? The whole study was devoted to Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, and Rome. But one day, a stone will be cut out without hands and come. I want you to see that Daniel 2 has a time component. Verse 30. But as for me, Daniel says, this secret is not revealed to me, for any wisdom I have more than anyone else. But for their sakes, there is supplied, but for the sakes of those who shall make known the interpretation. Now this says, this is where it belongs, at the end, and someone is going to make known the interpretation when this time comes. And something is being revealed here, even though we don't understand it and you can't understand it yet. It's not for this time, but there's a time coming, and it's for their sakes. Do we have good Bible for this? Do we have good Jesus Bible for this? But I tell you before it comes to pass that when it comes to pass, you might believe. Paul says, now all these things were written aforetime as examples for those upon whom the ends of the world are come. Verse 39 says, verse 38 says, you're this head of gold on the image. And I want you to understand that because verse 39 says, after thee. So I'm going to just say, gold goes to silver, which is worth more. You have prosperity, you have a decline. You have prosperity and the great tree. Let's take just a few verses in there in chapter 4. I'm in Daniel 4 and verse 3. Nebuchadnezzar is writing verse 3. He says, how great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. And he goes on to say that his kingdom, that's God, is an everlasting kingdom. His dominion is from generation to generation. Do we have that kingdom yet? So it's still future. It's still future, not only from his time, but our time. In verse 4, Nebuchadnezzar says, I was at rest. I was enjoying my rest in my house, my palace, flourishing. And I saw a dream which made me afraid. Something about what was given to him made him afraid. Verse 8. At the last, Daniel was brought in, came before me. And before him, at the end of verse 8, before him I told the dream, and I said, O Belteshazzar, master of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and know, there's the word, secret troubles you. The king has just confessed that something troubled him, but it's not going to trouble you because you're in touch with the gods, you're with the great God. I'm in verse 13, chapter 4. I saw in the visions of my head on my bed, behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven. And he cried aloud, and this is what he said, the great tree that is described. He said, hew down the tree, cut off the branches, shake off the leaves, scatter the fruit, and let the beasts get away. Nevertheless, verse 15, leave the stump, even with a band of iron and brass. Verse 16 says, let 7 times pass over him. So before the 7 times, what has to take place? Come on. It's real simple. There has to be a period of 12 months, and there has to be a period in which certain events are going to take place. And we can go into that in a while, but there's 12 months, and then what follows? 7 years follow. Cut the tree down. Let 7 times pass over it. 7 years have to come and go. So is this a beginning? Now this is equivalent to the subject of the daily misunderstood, misinterpreted. What we're looking at right here is something that I didn't see for 50 years. And it's this little clue from Ellen White that caused me to look more closely. Something begins right here. What begins? 7 times. What is it that causes the 7 times to begin? What about the tree? Cut it down. What about the gold? No more. What about? In verse 23, the end of the verse, let 7 times pass over him. At the end of verse 25, 7 times shall pass over you till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom. Tell me what happens at the end of the 7 years. The second coming. The kingdom comes. And the king has his senses restored to him. And he has other things restored to him. I need to take a little side trip right here for a minute. The first paragraph in black on the left-hand column, first paragraph says, in late 2015, the International Monetary Fund agreed to anoint the Chinese yuan as a reserve currency by adding it to its basket of special drawing rights, SDRs. You need to know that the dollar, according to this and many others, observers, the dollar is going this way, and the Chinese yuan is going this way. Well, what does that mean? It means that the dollar, having been a reserve, the global reserve currency for 50 plus years, is being replaced by the Chinese yuan. What is happening to the dollar at the same time? If you read this quickly, the dollar is tanking. The dollar is going to tank. We've talked this for 30, 40 years. The brass or bronze in these visions, put a band of iron and brass around the stump. Some read iron and bronze around the stump. Doesn't matter. We've given you the chart showing you that the brass is China. Let's say you were a rich man. We're just saying. Let's say you were a rich man. And you were rich in dollars. But you received word that the US dollar might lose a good portion of its worth, its value. What would you think about doing? Well, it's in the news every day now, all day long. Folks are running very quickly to gold and silver. If you were going to get out of dollars, what would you be thinking of getting into? Come on. You might invest in some yuan. Oh, heaven forbid. Well, it's going this way. The dollar's going this way. Why would you invest in yuan? Come on. Because as much as 3 years ago, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and the UN, all of this discussion has taken place that there's going to be a replacement world reserve currency. There's going to be a replacement. If this is true, what's indicated in here, if this brass or bronze represents China, then you and I are going to be ground under the heel of a currency that is worth a lot more than ours. Now tell me what that's going to mean. If our currency goes this way and the accepted currency of the day goes this way, how's it going to impact you and me?
Can't buy as much.
You can't buy as much?
Maybe nothing.
For sure. Has Ellen White suggested there's a time coming when the money will depreciate in value very suddenly? Yes. On several occasions, she made these observations that the time is coming. Our money is going to go this way. No, she doesn't say a thing about Chinese yuan, but she says a change is coming. She says the work that the church might have done in times of ease and, come on, prosperity, she'll be forced to do in unprosperity. So, I'm going to bring you right here because this is where I think we are. Of the 12 months since the inauguration of the Trump presidency, we're, barely 4 months into the 12? That leaves us, if there are 12 months, whatever the 12 months mean. So that gives us 9 months to wonder what all of this is about. Yes. I think I said something about 9 months on the graph, didn't I? Only 9 months until a collapse, question mark. Now this is important, I think, for this ministry. I think it's important for this little community. I think it's important for us as individuals. Because as we go along in this 12 months here, and the evidence begins to mount that this may be present truth, this may be all about what is going to bring us to the beginning of the end, then we're going to be interested, and more than that, we're going to act on the information. At the end of the days, Nebuchadnezzar said, verse 34, I lifted up my eyes unto heaven, my understanding returned. I blessed the Most High. I praised and honored Him that lives forever. Daniel chapter 7. I want you to see what I think I see. I think I see that the two dreams and the two visions are all about the same thing. The time of the end and the beginning of the time of the end. If I put Daniel's 4 visions and dreams together with Jesus' words in Matthew and Luke and Mark, if I put these things together with statements from Ellen White, then I think this is where we're going, and I'm going to summarize here very quickly. Fire, flood, and earthquake with war and bloodshed. It's no secret, I don't think it's a secret in the visions given to Daniel, that there's a struggle, there's a war coming between the ram and the he-goat. The ram is going to do something that is going to anger and infuriate the goat from the west. And there's going to be a war. And the goat is going to win the war, win the battle. But I believe if we keep reading, it's going to lose the war. The United States is militarily so far ahead of the rest of the world. I don't see Iran as having any chance of really hurting us militarily. As a matter of fact, I think the Russians and the Chinese and anybody else out there knows that we've got the military, that no one's going to beat us in that way. And yet we're coming to some collapse. Now the question is, what is going to collapse? Well, these people are saying, and a lot of people are saying, and I believe the Bible is saying, and I believe Ellen White is saying, that we're going to see the dollar collapse. We're going to see our money, our circulating currency collapse. And she says, in this context, there's going to be a change in the currency. I believe that's immediate. I believe that's just before us. I do not see the Russians and the Chinese jumping into the middle of our fracas with Iran. Why not? Because it says in Daniel 8, no one came to help the ram. No one helped him. I do not believe that militarily we can be defeated. I do not believe that Russia and China are going to defeat us in connection with Iran militarily. They are going to do exactly what they have said they are going to do. They're going to dump our treasury bills. They hold our debt to the tune of $3+ trillion. They're going to dump our U.S. treasury bills on the world market, and that will bankrupt us. That will bankrupt us. But there's something else that I have to give Ellen White the credit for. Fire, flood, and earthquake with war and bloodshed. Okay, the war and the bloodshed, that's part of it. The question is, what about fire, flood, and earthquake? Great earthquakes, Jesus says. Doesn't simply say earthquakes. And great earthquakes there will be in diverse places. These are up there on the Richter scale. And so I'm following, and have been following for months, the day-by-day count of earthquakes. You can just go online and it'll give you every earthquake, little, big, in between, what time it happened and where it happened on planet Earth. The leading seismologists for the state of California and for the USGS are saying that California is primed. Oh, they've been saying that. No. They are warning that the faults, major faults in California, that would be the San Andreas and the next one coming out under San Francisco Bay and going up through Napa Valley. I never can remember it. What is it?
The Cascadia fault?
No, the Cascadia is on up off of Oregon. This is another primary fault that breaks. No, Juan de Fuca's out in the Pacific. We get there. We've got to work our way. We get to San Francisco and San Francisco Bay. Just north of San Francisco Bay, the San Andreas goes out into the Pacific at Point Reyes Lighthouse. Just before that, there's a major fault that breaks away and goes up through the Sacramento, what do you call it, where the river is, the water, the delta. San Joaquin Delta, okay. If you're not read on this, let me tell you, the seismologists, and we're talking about national, not just California, the seismologists have said, if we get a quake under that Sacramento River in there where all these levees are 50 to 70 years old and not working, if it ever breaks, this will be the greatest single natural disaster ever to hit the United States. Just the Sacramento River, if a quake should break that. That's not what the worry is. The worry is that a major fault beginning at the Mexican border down there on the San Andreas and running all the way up through San Francisco and breaking out into the Pacific, that's where the Juan de Fuca plate breaks off into the, what did you call it? Anyhow, just like the fault splits down there in Sacramento at San Francisco, this one splits off the coast of Oregon, one that runs just a few miles inland off of the coast, and the one that's 300-400 miles out. It's going to go on through Washington State and under Seattle principally, or near Seattle, and out into British Columbia. All these fault lines are connected, these major fault lines are connected, and all of them are hot. All of them are primed. Not because I'm saying so, but because it's in the news. All you have to do is just follow the news. What if the great earthquakes are mixed with war and bloodshed? What if the United States is broken financially and broken socially, broken? You understand that the state of California alone is the 5th largest economy in the world. Just the state of California alone. If you shatter the West Coast, then you have humbled the lion with eagle's wings. Then you have chopped the tree down. Then you have all of these visions and dreams right here have a beginning. And some of them give you very specific time points like 1260 days and on and on and on. This is what I propose. That you and I watch, and you and I read, and you and I compare. But if we get down 10 months out of the 12, that's about 7 months away. If we get down closer to the end of the 12 months, and we see movements speeding up, we see all kinds of things that are very worrisome, what should we do about it? Come on, I'm asking you because you and I live here in the backwoods of Alabama. What should we do about it? Not much we can do about it. But what if you were among the million-plus Seventh-day Adventists living west of the San Andreas? If you put Ellen White together with these possibilities, the church will appear to fall. Could financial reasons be at work? We're already losing our publishing houses. We're already losing, closing academies, selling properties. I just see a convergence. I can't help it. I see a convergence of events that are pointing to the very near future for you and me and us and the church and the world. Is there anything at all that can be done? And the answer is yes, but you have to be in touch with the right people who have some understanding of what you can do this side of the event. And I'm talking about people who are not necessarily Adventist Christians. And they are warning and warning and warning. Don't put your money here. Don't put your money there. Don't buy this. Don't do that. Because whatever you and I are going to do, we, according to the light, we need to do before the crisis arrives. I know this makes sense to you because you and I have talked these things for years, and we're not the only ones in the church that talk these things, but there's a slant to it. And the slant is present tense, not way off somewhere. And this is what concerns me. The present tense. So without saying too much, I'm just going to say this. One of the things that we've prayed about and we've talked about is how do we get our families, individual families, out of debt? Because that is one of the conditions in the Red Books. Get out of debt as quickly as possible. Owe no man anything, it says. And it's in the context of the crisis ahead. Now, would it take a miracle for that to occur? So, if it's going to happen before the crisis comes, then maybe you and I are going to see some miracles in the next few weeks and months. Big miracles. The instruction is, get ready, get ready, get ready. The instruction is before the crisis. Events cast their shadows before them. In Luke 11 and 29, if you want to look at it. They came to Jesus. These are Jews. And among them, some of his disciples. They came to Jesus and they said, show us a sign that we may believe. Show us a sign that we may believe. And this was Jesus' answer in Luke 11:29. It is an evil generation that seeketh after a sign. And no sign shall be given it, but the sign of Jonas the prophet. So tell me what Jonas the prophet was all about. Was there a time component? Jesus is referring to Jonah and the sign of Jonah that's going to be given. 3 days and 3 nights. Now that was about the resurrection, the death and burial and resurrection of Jesus, the cross and the resurrection. What does Jonah the prophet have to say to you and me? If it's an evil generation in this context and they're looking for signs, what does Jonah have to say? Jonah said, I don't want to do it. Was Jonah correct? I knew you were going to do this. I knew you were good. Was Jonah correct? Yes. Nevertheless, you and I may not want to go out and say what needs to be said to the last generation, but it needs to be said. It must be said. Jesus said, this message of the kingdom, this gospel of the kingdom must first be preached for a witness to how many? Every kindred, tongue, nation, and people before the end can come. So you and I are here, this little group, this little neighborhood, this little ministry, and we are speaking to millions of people. We have spoken to millions, and we're about, God willing, God enabling, we're about to speak to many millions more. So I'm having conversations with our printer, our customer service representative. I'm having conversations with Tony, board members, having conversations saying, God's going to send the money. God's going to send the money. God's going to send the money. But if and when the money comes and we're looking at 7 to 10 months, what do we need to do? Come on. So I'm making a list with Tony Harriman. Tony, is your passport up to date? Yes. I want you to fly to Great Britain. I want you to set everything up with the British Post Office so that we print the books and ship them and they go. I want you to fly to Australia, New Zealand. I want you to set everything up so we print the books, ship them there, and they go. I'm looking at the Caribbean. I'm looking at Central and South America. I'm looking at Western Europe. I'm looking at a lot of places. So if we need to move, we need to move as quickly as possible, and we need to move ahead of time. And if that's true for this ministry, it's true for every one of our families. Every one of us need to move and act quickly. Jesus said this, this is your hour. He said this as they were coming to seize him in the garden. This is your hour and the power of darkness. Sometimes I try to get across to people in my seminars that God doesn't win every battle. That doesn't sound cheery. God doesn't win every battle. He wins the war. Ultimately, He wins the war. But we have examples for 6,000 years of human history where God didn't win that battle in the garden. God doesn't win all the battles. And you and I are about to be dragged into. So this is your hour and the power of darkness. And Jesus went on to say in Luke chapter 12, if the good man of the house, not the bad man, if the good man of the house had known at what hour the thief would come, he would have done something. Tell me what the missing word is right there. He would have done something. He would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. I submit to you that you and I are at the watching time. And as we see the tension build, and I believe it's building every hour now, as we see the tension building between the nations, with the banks and the economies that are stressed and distressed, as we see things move ever more quickly, what do we do? Tell me, what is the first thing we do? All right, pray, but tell me, what do you pray? What is needed most for you and me and us right now?
Money.
Well, money would help. What we need right now is the guidance, enlightenment of the Holy Spirit to tell us what to do and what not to do. What to do and what not to do. And if you're not praying along those lines, please do. I wonder if you have a special prayer request you want to add here as we close the hour.
Travel mercies for them to go back.
If you're able to kneel, I want to have prayer, and let's close. Heavenly Father, you survey the end from the beginning. Every mystery is known to you. We have been following in the Advent way for a long time now. Virtually every person here this morning. We're not newcomers. We have an appreciation for the prophetic writings of Scripture. They are mysterious still. And here we're talking about things that may or may not be correct by interpretation. But if perchance they are, if perchance we are being directed prophetically and biblically to the beginning of sorrows, then I pray that you will guide each one of us. You will guide us individually with your Spirit. Plant a good tree, bear good fruit in each of our lives, please. Make us courageous and wise in printing the books and disseminating light and truth to millions. This is the call. This is the challenge. And I believe this is the time. Every person here this morning has heartfelt prayer requests. I ask you to honor the secret things in our hearts, the things that we can put in Jesus' hands. And I just ask you to bless and direct and guide and keep us until the kingdom come, until the King of the kingdom comes. And I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.